Basketball fans, welcome back. So this is a special bulletin to the KPA Dockers and the Equity Hawks. And my God, these are two teams that every single year they keep disappointing us in the continental showdowns that they go to. Last year we saw what happened in the AWBL. KPA made it to the finals and they choked away to a Sporting. And Equity, they got knocked out in the quarterfinals by KPA. And actually, it's quite kind of poetic because this is the same thing that happened this year in the qualifiers. And in the qualifiers, KPA knocked down Equity and they fell to Al Ahly Sporting Club. And even with the chance to go at it again to qualify and finish number 3, KPA decided to choke away. So there's a couple of things that I want to mention, and in this video I'm going to address them once and for all. So yesterday I made a post. I made actually 2 posts putting the results for KPA, the women's team, and the Equity Hawks women's team, and I left some comments there which a lot of people have been reacting to them, especially on Facebook. Instagram, not so much. Put them on X, not so much, but Facebook, in the Facebook groups, that's where there's a lot of chatter. And those comments are very true because number one, these are 2 teams that are quote unquote the best basketball teams in the country. No women's team has been able to take them apart easily. Okay, we've had the Zitex Sparks try to do that thing last year to the Equity Hawks. They managed, but in the finals they flopped hard and they got swept. And in this season, we saw the Equity Hawks get their get back, and they were able to snatch the KBF title from KPA, and they stopped a potential three-peat. So, this video, we're going to be looking at the competition that KPA and Equity have locally, and how it prepares them in continental matchups. So, there's not too long ago, I can even say a few months ago, I made a video saying that the women's division is very weak. And it's true because if you look at what happens in the women's division, there are basically like 3 teams that run the women's division. So I'm putting the Zitex Sparks there on the pot because they have been a team that has been showing flashes of brilliance. I know I'll give them the nod because they made last year's finals. This year they didn't. So that was that. So I'm gonna throw those 3 there. I'm not gonna put USIU. I don't think they're ready yet. So those 3 teams, Kenya, the women's divisions runs through those 3 teams. But when push comes to shove, the only 2 teams that are always on the top, the KPA women's team and the Equity Hawks. Now, if you look at the games that these 2 teams play against all the other teams in the women's division, they're always 100% lopsided unless they're playing against each other. So what does that communicate? This shows you that they are not getting enough sparring partners that can be able to push them to the next level. The only thing that they can do is push each other, and they only play twice in a whole year. In a whole season, they only play twice. So this situation that they have where they blow out teams here locally, it gives the impression that they are very good teams and they are legitimate contenders to the title, because when you're here in Kenyan soil, the biggest test is whether you can go ahead and win the title. But when they go ahead, one of those 2, KPA Dockers, the women's team, or the Equity Hawks goes ahead and wins it, when they go to Zone 5, yes, last year I can say it was a fluke season. A lot of people thought that the KPA Dockers had what it takes to win. Even some people even thought that the Equity Hawks had what it takes to win. But reality quickly set in for the Equity Hawks because they were just playing out of their depth. And they lost in the quarterfinals to KPA, which was kind of poetic. And now, KPA, when they played against REG last year, I referenced last year because that's the peak of their arrogance. I feel like this is the KPA team were not humble in defeat this year, and they did not appreciate the run that they had last year. And now, even when I say not humble in defeat, you look at how the competition panned out this year and the way they performed. But that's besides the point. They played REG, and That game they won by 4 points, and they had a lot of stuff to say, especially in this network. I'm not going to go in detail because I already went to that in detail. These events happened over a year ago. And in the finals, they stunk up the place and they got blown out by about 54 points. And nobody said anything. Now, this year, they did not make the actual WBLA. Both teams lost in the WBLA qualifiers. So, in the last year's AWBL qualifiers, KPA and Equity, the KPA won the title. They were first place, and the Equity Hawks third place. I can even add and even go on and say that both these two teams were lucky because they had a easy road to the AWBL because there was no resistance being posed by the other teams. But now, fast forward to this year, we saw the Equity Hawks get their get back. They went ahead and beat KPA in the finals, and that was a very close game. The series played out all 5 games, and it was very exciting for me because I wanted a slugfest, and I really wanted to see how far these two teams can go. And I just knew, regardless of whoever was going to win, both of the two teams are going to make it they're going to make it to the Zone 5 qualifiers, the WBLA qualifiers. So yes, both teams went ahead and made it because of them being in the finals. And my God, they got beat from pillar to post in the AWBL qualifiers because as other teams retooled and as other teams recruited heavily, the KPA Dockers never learned from their mistakes. Okay, they did some recruitment, but they did not address the main underlying issues. They have too many people. They have too many people who do not know where they stand in that team. That team is full of people who are washed, people who can't play basketball at that level. The only basketball that majority, I can even say 85% of KPA players, even the Equity Hawks players, is only tailored for the Kenyan market. And in the Kenyan market, they only tailor to hammer these other weak teams in the women's division. That's why they produce ridiculous scoring lines. You can even see a game ending 122-36 here in Kenya. But the reverse Uno happens when they go to Zone 5. And you can even give an example of KPA. KPA are used to blowing out teams. So the KPA women's team, majority of the time, blow out teams, and they always do that in quick successive fashion. I mean, here in Kenya, they dispatch the teams. But the reverse Uno happens when they go to Continental showdowns. Because the only teams, I can even say teams because there are two, KPA has never been able to beat the Alexandria Sporting and the Alali Sporting. Alexandria Sporting has been owning KPA for years. Since 2022 and 2023, KPA has never won against a Sporting. And this year, Alali Sporting picked it up from where a Sporting left off. A Sporting are the two-time champions. They didn't make it because Alali made it. And now, the Alali Sporting they dispatched KPA in very embarrassing fashion in the semis. And I don't think people understand this situation because with that loss KPA had, I'm going to go to Equity. That loss KPA had, it was so bad because they got knocked out and they didn't have a chance to even make the finals. Now they had to go play the third place game against APR. So APR made quick work of them in the second game they played. I believe it was the second, yeah. They got blown out by 20 points. And this game for the third place was not different as KPA lost this game as well. And for some odd reason, I feel like they knew that they're going to lose this game and they didn't want to say it in advance. They were like, just go out there, play, make sure to just lose so that they don't have to go to Dakar. Because if they went to Dakar, they're just going to get embarrassed. And of course, the Equity Hawks had to settle for the classification games. I mean, it was sad. And it's funny to me that these people, when they win, they have the loudest mouths because after that time last year, they won against REG. It was similar. I can even say it's a year removed because those games happened 17th December 2023. So at the recording of this video, it's like almost a year. So they had a lot of ish to say. I mean, These people could not keep quiet. But when they lost, quiet. They're all quiet. Ask yourself why. Hmm? It's when you know that you when these teams actually know. I don't even know if it's a gag or anything. They try to like show up. They try to show up and look like they are good. But when push comes to shove, when they meet teams that can actually play basketball and actually play good offense and defense on them, they crumble. And that's something that I've observed numerous times. And that's the reason as to why you're seeing these comments come out here. Ask yourself why they don't show the same level of arrogance this year. They were very quiet. You never had them say anything. They were very quiet. I even know they are losers because when they lost against a Sporting last year in that championship game, they received their medals, but they didn't even do the post-game presser. They didn't. It's reality hitting. And this year it was so good because reality hit them like a ton of bricks. Because in the expectation for KPA was, were they going to be able to go back and challenge to the finals? That's the whole thing. And not even the finals for Zone 5 because they already won that. The finals for the WBLA. They made it to the silver medal last year. In their mind, they already arrived when they reached the podium. When they reached the finals, they're like, we don't have to play. Already medals. That's why they got beat by 54 points. And this year, they got beat by Al Ahly Sporting. They got beat from pillar to post. It was not even a contest. You could even see the body language for these teams. This KPA team, they didn't want to be there at all. I remember watching that game live and my God, it was so difficult for me to watch because at some point you're like, do these people even know how to play basketball? Because they looked like amateur. It was amateur hour there. This is a team that is used to blowing out teams that are, below average. And there's something that I even been posting, especially on my social media. If you've been following me on Instagram, NBA Kenya, make sure to follow there because that's where I put my raw thoughts and opinions. So KPA and the KPA Dockers and the Equity Hawks, these are two teams that are designed to beat only Kenyan teams. And the way they are designed is they can only beat teams that don't know how to play good basketball. They play low quality basketball. You can even say the teams that they are used to dominate are below average teams. But now when they go upper level and they meet other champions, other teams that have the ability to take it to them, they have no game plan. Even said Coach Ujuku needs to be fired. They need to fire Coach Ujuku for KPA. They need to let go of like 7 players. Because honestly, some of them are too old. They can't play basketball. Even basic basketball IQ they lack. Same case as the Equity Hawks. Personally, there are too many old players on that squad. Get rid of them. And get people who can actually play. Get talent. Stop depending on big name players. You think that some athletes there, just because they play for the 3x3 and national teams, they are big names. When they go outside in Zone 5 and in the WBL or even WBLA, as the case this year, they went ahead and got beat. And it was not even close at all. And the big names didn't even have big games. So big name players, small games. Like they're just small game players with big names. So that's the thing. And I've been stressing this for years now because I've been following KPA basketball and Equity Hawks basketball on their Zone 5s, and when they go ahead and proceed to the AWBL last year, and the year before it was the Africa Champions Cup, and they flopped. Equity flopped. They didn't even make the Africa Champions Cup in 2022. KPA made it, got beat by a Sporting in the quarterfinals. Now, last year, both teams managed to make the AWBL. The Equity Hawks finished 6th and KPA finished 2nd. The expectation for KPA this year was to make it to the finals and contend. But what did they decide to do? They decided to choke. They decided to not show up in the most important game. They only know how to show up against teams that can't play basketball. That's what they are good at. And I mean, even the Equity Hawks, there was no much expectation. I even said the Equity Hawks in Continental showdowns, there's not much you can expect this team to do. There's nothing there's no expectation because even getting there is a miracle, I know they're going to dominate here in Kenya, but when it goes to when they go ahead and play in Continental showdowns, they fail and they flop hard. So the thing is, the bottom line, the KPA Dockers and the Equity Hawks are not serious when it comes to Continental showdowns. And the main reason as to why these two teams fail, they lack vision, direction, and an identity. Go look at the KPA team. Is this a team that has any identity? Is this a defensive team? Is this an offensive team? Is this a team that is big on communication? Because if you look at the Al-Ahly teams, or even the teams that come from Egypt, they have a strong defensive and offensive identity. They have both. And that's what makes Egypt good. And that's why Egypt dominates in African basketball, especially both on the men's side and on the women's side. And look at the Equity Hawks. This is a team that they don't know even what identity is. Both these two teams, KPA and Equity, don't even understand what basic basketball IQ is. Look at their coaching staff. People who don't know how to game plan for Continental showdowns. They use the same blueprint that they use to beat these local teams here. But when they go there, they use the same plays. They try to run the same plays. They try to do run and gun. Then they come out with excuses. We'll get them next time. Bad day at the office. Bad day at the office happens to KPA and Equity every single time they go to Continental showdowns. Zone 5 and the AWBL or WBLA. They keep rebranding. I don't know. They should just stick to one. But I think the WBLA is going to stick there forever. But that is really what happens. And even if KPA and Equity make it to the finals next year, do you think that they can have a better performance? Every single year, it's just a disappointment from KPA. Last year, I can even go on record saying KPA and Equity had a fluke season. It was luck. Their luck ran out this year. KPA finished 4th. They are not even good enough to finish number 3. And the Equity Hawks, number 5. So that means they were out. And top 3 went. So it's very embarrassing. It's too embarrassing. And even the players themselves, they're not even embarrassed. The organization is not embarrassed. They're like, we'll get there next year. We'll get there next year. They think it's a given that they're going to progress. That's the same thing that even the men's team suffered from when they won the KBF title multiple times, and they flopped in the road to BAL. And it's sad because the KPA organization lacks identity. And I talked about both the men's and women's team. This video have gone in deep and talked about the women's team. Even on the men's team, I made a video talking about we're witnessing the downfall. And these are two teams. These are two organizations that at some point they were the best in Kenyan basketball. Like about 2 years ago, everyone wanted to be part of Equity or KPA, but now nobody wants to be part of it. On the men's side and also on the women's side, I can say on the men's side because the Equity Dumas flopped hard. They don't have any players that can contend. They lack an identity. They lack vision. Too much politics in that team, and that's the reason as to why they lose. And looking at even on the flip side, if you look at even KPA, the same thing. They signed so many players, and they can even pass off as a Div1 team, and even went on record and said the Equity Dumas and KPA Dockers, these are two teams that any well-coached Div1 team can beat the KPA Dockers, the men's team, and the Equity Dumas back to back in a weekend. They can beat them back to back. I don't want to say the same day, that would be very disrespectful, but back to back is okay. And in the same realm as the Ulinzi Warriors, very useless. And now we're seeing the same thing happen to KPA. KPA, they will only be known as Kenyan champions, that's it. But when it comes to continental basketball, they have nothing, absolutely nothing to offer. And that's the thing, that same thing applies to the Equity Hawks. They have nothing to offer. They have outlived their usefulness. And honestly, even if they win it, it's just going to be the same situation. I mean, nothing's going to change. Nothing is going to change. And man, those are the reasons as to why I feel like both the KPA men's and women's team, the Equity Dumas, Equity Hawks, they're just washed. all of them, and I have lost any confidence I had in these two teams, and they'll continue being a disappointment to us. Hopefully, there's another team in the women's division that can take these two teams apart and just get us new teams that can go and play in Zone 5, because for years, there's just been KPA Equity, both teams. Why can't this other women's team step up and take the mantle the same way as the Nderitu Thunder did in the women's division? The Nderitu Thunder before Twende, they were very irrelevant. But now after Twende acquired them, right now they're in the BL. BAL Season 5, they're there. Look at how 1 year has turned around something. Need to have somebody come in and just buy a team and go ahead and, do that thing. And use the Thunder blueprint, because these two teams are useless. Both the men's side and women's side. KPA Dockers, useless. KPA franchise, useless. Equity, I mean that bank should just come and reclaim this team. Honestly, they just put up embarrassing games that are uninspired, games that have no. You can even see that there's no growth, development, or even talent in those two teams. And yeah, man. I mean, it's very disappointing, man. It's very disappointing. So do drop me your comments in the comment section down below on what you think. And that's my take for today. And Merry Christmas and have a happy New Year. Peace out.